Alright guys, what's up? New deck profile today. We are doing Windwitches. This deck just got support with Blazing Vortex. It's gotten significantly better, but most importantly, it's no longer just an engine. It's actually its own deck. You can actually play this deck on its own. Like you don't have to just splash it into a bunch of other stuff. You can actually play this deck as it is. But new cards, very exciting. Let's start the deck profile. First of all, we've got 3 copies of Windwitch Icebell. Even though there's new support, this is still the best Windwitch monster. Basically, it lets you special summon itself and then summon a Windwitch monster from your deck, and then it inflicts life points to your opponent. 500 life points to your opponent, but it's still like your main, it's still your main combo starter. This is the main card you want to have in your deck for sure. Next, we play 3 copies of Windwitch Glassbell. This is another very good one. This one is the searcher of the deck. Basically, a normal or special summon, it searches a Windwitch monster. It's also a tuner, so this card definitely has some good uses. But this card does lock you into wins for the rest of the turn, which can, doesn't really matter in our particular build, but if you were to splash this with something else, it might lock you out. But in pure Windwitches, irrelevant. So yeah, you're locked into wins, but it's whatever. It's no big deal. But it does search. Now, this is the card that you're more than often going to search, which is going to be the Windwitch Snowbell. This card is another tuner. It gets you into the crystal wings and stuff like that. If you control 2 or more wind monsters, doesn't even have to be Windwitch monsters, you can special summon this card. And then on top of that, any synchro monster made with this card can't be destroyed by card effects. Very useful when you're making crystal wings. Next, we've got Windwitch Freezebell. This card is another. This is a new one. This card is very, very good for a very good extender. If you control only Windwitch monsters, you could special summon this card from your hand. And then on top of that, this card has the ability to increase its level to 4 at any time, which when you're, it's actually pretty helpful here and there. Sometimes you want to go into a 7, sometimes you want to go into a 5. Like, for example, like you have a copy of Windwitch Snowbell, you can make this level 4, go into a Synchro 5. The cool thing about the new Windwitch cards is that they give you a lot more. They give you a lot more variety of cards that you can go into, which I think is probably my favorite part of the new Windwitches. It gives you more variety, so I like them for that. And then on top of that, any Synchro monster made with this card can be destroyed by battle, which again, pretty useful, especially if your opponent doesn't read the effects and they enter battle phase and they try to destroy your monster and they can't. Next, we've got 3 copies of Windwitch Blizzardbell. Again, this is a new card. It's only a common, unfortunately, but it is the new card. Basically, you can normal summon it if you control if all of your monsters are, if you control either no monsters or all of your monsters are Windwitches. You can normal summon this for free. It's a level 5 tuner, which is gigantic. And on top of that, this card you can send from your field or from your hand to inflict 500 life points to your opponent, which seems like a really stupid effect. Not that stupid in time, but it doesn't seem like this deck does not lose in time. By the way, this deck is like prank kids. It wins in time. Like it just for no reason just inflicts battle damage, effect damage. I mean, but that effect is actually relevant because you have the new card, which is the Windwitch Diamond Bell. You can activate this, inflict 500 life points by sending it to the graveyard, and this has an effect where you can destroy an opponent's card if you inflict life points to them. So it does have synergy in that regard. So you have like an additional interruption. Next, we play 3 copies of the Wind Charmer. I unfortunately have 2. A 1 for display and then 2 proxied over there. I put them somewhere in my Harpy deck and I can't find that at the moment. But you play this. Basically, this card searches the Windwitch Icebell, which is your main combo starter. So you basically play 6 copies of Windwitch Icebell because you play the 3 Windwitch Icebells and then you search, and then you have the Wind the Wind Chandler. In addition to that, so you basically almost always start with the card. Basically, you just discard this and discard a wind monster, which you always have in your hand, in order to add a wind monster with 1500 or less defense from your deck to your hand. Very good card, good for synergy. 1 copy of Tempest. This card also is very good. You can usually summon it either from your hand by banishing winds, or if you get it into graveyard, from your graveyard by banishing winds. The good thing about this deck, or I don't even know if you could call this the good thing or the bad thing about this deck does not really use the graveyard, like, at all. The closest thing to using the graveyard that this deck does is it targets its own cards in the graveyard in order to inflict damage. But other than that, like, you never bring your monsters back from the grave. You could literally play Necro Valley in this deck and it will have no effect whatsoever on your deck. And actually, now that I've said it out loud, I actually think Necro Valley would be pretty good in this deck. This deck would probably be pretty cool with Gravekeepers. Yeah, I didn't think about that before, but yeah, that actually seems like a reasonably good deck. Yeah, we'll try that maybe one day. But yeah, we play one copy of Tempest. Yeah, very good card because you just do not use your graveyard. You just banish, summon this level 7, and then you can go with your level 1 tuner into any of the level 8s if you wanted to. Like, just, it's basically like a free, cool level 8. Next, we've got the Lightning Dragon Ruler of Drafts. This will help you get out Tempest very, very easily. You actually want to open with this more than you open with the Tempest. You can even play 3 copies of this and 1 copy of Tempest. This lets you discard a Wind or a Dragon and itself, and then summon a Tempest from the deck, which is a pretty useful effect because you can get rid of this, summon a Wind monster, and then synchro it away, and then use Tempest to bring itself back, and then synchro again. So it can be fairly useful in that regard. But yeah, Lightning, we play 1 copy of Lightning. Next, we play 1 copy of the Awakening of the Possessed, Rasen Ryu. Very difficult name. This card is really cool. It's like basically an additional extra deck monster that you play in your main deck. I like it quite a bit. All you have to do to summon it, you can summon it from your main deck by tributing a spellcaster monster and a wind monster. Now, your entire deck is all spellcasters and all wind monsters, so virtually everything is compatible anyways. But this card is very good because you summon it, and then on summon it lets you bounce your opponent a card your opponent controls, which is already pretty good if you're going second. And if you're not going second, this is a level 5, and you can if this is a level 5, and you can basically use it for synchro plays if you wanted to with your other cards. But when this card is sent to the graveyard, it lets you search a Spiritual Art card, which you can search a copy of Spiritual Wind Art Miyabi, which is, when this card is, you can activate this, tribute a wind, and then target a card your opponent controls, put it on the top of their deck. Very good effect. And you get that basically all for free, just by like tributing 2 monsters. But I'll show you some combos right after this, of the various things you can do. Those are most of the main deck monsters. Now let's go into some of the hand traps. We play 3 copies of the Heavenly Zephyr Myriada. Very good card. I like it. Again, I try to, when I play hand traps, and this deck has a lot of space for hand traps. When I try to play hand traps, typically I will go with hand traps that sort of supplement or help the deck. I don't want to play hand traps that will just be bricks when you draw them. This card is really cool because it's a wind dragon, so it does benefit the deck because it's still a wind, so you can still special summon it even under your own restrictions. But what's cool about it is you can also like synchro summon with it once you get it. It's a level 7. You can do all types of things. But basically what this card does, if your opponent special summons a monster from their extra deck with 2,000 or more attack, you could special summon this to the field and then negate a monster on your opponent's side of the field, and they can't respond with monster effects with that card's name in response to this card's activation. So like, let's say they summon like a Borreload Savage Dragon. You special summon this, they activate their Borreload Savage Dragon to, like, attach a material, but that's irrelevant. You summon this, negate their effects, and then they're just like permanently negated, and they can't even respond with a negate because you can't activate cards in response with the same effect. And then the next turn you can use this for synchro material to summon, like, I don't know, like, yeah, one of your wind level 8 wind synchros, which is very useful. Next we play 3 copies of Ghost Mourner and Moonlit Chill. This is just another kind of wind hand trap, but also pretty good. It negates monster effects. 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird. Very good against Drytron right now. Drytron is running around rampant, but this card just wrecks it. We play 3 copies of Nibiru, just generically very good against other things. Your boards are actually not that crazy in this deck. You build a pretty, like, small field, to be 100% honest with you. So Nibiru is perfectly fine. You can even sometimes you can go first and then just suicide your own board, and then next turn just make another Crystal Wing, so it's no big deal. So 2 copies of that. We play 3 copies of the all-new Windwitch Chimes. This card is actually fairly good. And basically just target a Windwitch monster and then on the field and summon a Windwitch monster from your deck that is different from that monster, which is super good because you can target like an extra deck Windwitch monster, and then you can summon any Windwitch monster from your main deck. So pretty cool there. Then we play 2 draw spells. Play 1 copy of Spellbook of Knowledge, which is once per turn, and then we play 1 copy of Wonder Wand. When we draw it, we draw it. Those are pretty good. You might want to bump those up. You can actually replace the Nibiru's with these cards if you wanted to, if you're uncomfortable with the Nibiru's. Then we play 1 copy of Spiritual Windart Miyabi, and 2 copies of Infinite Impermanence to round out our hand traps. This deck has a lot of hand traps, which makes it very competitive against a lot of other decks, because it's tough to set up a board against 10 hand traps. Now, for the extra deck, we play a ton of synchros. This deck is like a deck from like 2014. Like, you play virtually all synchros. You don't even play XYZ monsters. You barely play any links. But we play, because all of the Wind Witches have a ton of different levels now. We can actually play a very creative extra deck. Because before, the Wind Witch extra deck was basically all level 7s and level 8s. But now we can actually play level 5s, level 6s, stuff like that, just to kind of bring some variety in. We play 1 copy of High Speed Roy Chambara, very easy to go into. It attacks twice, and that is not like attack twice on a monster. It's attack twice, period. And on top of that, it gains attack. Stardust Charge Warrior, draw a card. Adamancipator Raptite. This card is actually pretty good. It's like a Call by the Grave sort of effect. It's more of like a DD Crow effect if you have a wind monster in grave, and this is, again, very easy to summon. Yeah, very good. 1 copy of Windwitch Winterbell. This is like their main synchro monster. Typically, it just inflicts life points. It's not bad, but it's not that great. 1 Clear Wing Crystal Dragon to get over large level monsters. 1 Clear Wing Fast Dragon. This deck actually doesn't struggle with Dragoon either, because it has a lot of cards like Clear Wing, Synchro Dragon, and Clear Crystal Wing that just out Dragoon very easily. 1 copy of Wind Pegasus Agonister. This card is one of the better ones if you're going first or going second, because it actually has a graveyard effect, so you can go into a Crystal Wing and then you give yourself additional protection on top of that. 1 copy of Crystal Wing, probably the best one to go into, Cyber Slash Harpy. 1 copy of Stardust. I'm playing 2 of these because I do go into them quite a lot. 2 copies of Windwitch Diamond Bell. This is the new card I should probably talk about a little bit. Basically, this card, whenever you inflict battle or effect damage, you can pop an opponent's card. And on top of that, if you used all Windwitch monsters to synchro summon this card, you can actually use this card. You can use that effect twice per turn, which is a pretty crazy effect. And then on summon, this card targets a Windwitch monster in graveyard and inflicts life points to your opponent equal to half. So on summon, it basically both inflicts damage and pops a card. And then additionally, if you inflict more damage, you can pop another card. So typically, you'll pop, the turn you summon, you'll probably pop 2 cards. Pretty good. But this is definitely a very, going second card. Then we play 1 copy of High Speed Rubber Band Shooter. Basically, an extra normal summon for wins. The Wind Charmer steals a wind monster from your opponent's graveyard, which can help sometimes. And 1 copy of Great Fly, which just boosts wins. But typically, I'll be honest with you, you don't even go into these all that much. Most of the time, you just go into synchro plays because you lock yourself into them anyway. But let me show you guys a few different combos here. Just the simple, very basic combos of the deck of how to play it, basically. I'm not going to go in depth because the deck is really not that complicated for me to have to go into, so I'll just go into the very, very simple combos. Most of your combos will start with a copy of Windwitch Ice Spell. This is like your main combo start. You always want to start with this card. That's why you search it with the Wind Charmer and stuff like that. And if you don't get to this, then you just can combo off with these guys, because you can normal summon and then summon this, and then you've got level 8 right there. But typically, you want to start with the Windwitch Ice Spell because you have the largest variety of plays that you can do with the Windwitch Ice Spell. So basically, this card, if you control the monsters, you can special summon. And then you can activate the effect of Windwitch Ice Spell in order to summon a Windwitch monster from the deck. Right there. And then you can inflict 500 life points. So you can activate Windwitch Glass Spell, activate Windwitch Ice Spell, Chainlink 2, so Chainlink 1, Chainlink 2, Chain Block, and inflict 500 life points, and then search a Windwitch monster, which you are going to search the Windwitch Snowbell. Windwitch Snowbell has an effect, like I said before, if you control 2 winds, you can special summon it to your side of the field. At this point, we are locked into only summoning wind, basically wind monsters from your extra deck. Is what we're basically. I think it's like level 5 or higher wind monsters from our extra deck, which is completely fine. But there's a few different things that you can do. From here on in, you can go Glass Spell, Ice Spell, synchro these 2 away, and you can go into any number of level 7s, which is like Wind Pegasus, Clear Wing Fast Dragon. This lets you quick effect negate a monster from the extra deck, lets you get over big monsters, lets you inflict life points. You can do any number of these cards right here. But basically, yes, these are all fine targets. Typically, if you're going first, the best one to do is the Adagnister. So you can go into that, and then you have the Windwitch Snowbell and the Adagnister. You can synchro those 2 monsters away in order to summon either the Windwitch Diamond Bell, the Stardust, Cyber / Harpy, or the Crystal Wing. Typically speaking, you will want to go into the Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon because it's a monster negate. If it's summoned off of Snowbell, it can't be destroyed by card effects, and it gains attack whenever it battles a huge monster anyway, or it gains attack equal to the monster that it negated. So this card's always going to be gigantic. If you happen to have the new Windwitch monster, which is the Blizzard Bell, you'll probably want to go into the Diamond Bell because it's an additional interruption during your opponent's turn. This lets you bounce a monster. This gives you protection. They all have there's such a large variety of toolbox that you can use in this deck, so it's really, the choices are up to you. But that is like the basic combo to get into like one of the level 8 synchros with just 1 card. Crystal Wing being one of the most notables. Next, this is an additional combo that you can do. It's also pretty cool. Same thing, you start with Windwitch Ice Spell, special summon it, special summon the Glass Spell, and then search the Snowbell, special summon the Snowbell. You can actually activate an effect, or technically not activate an effect, use a summoning condition from your deck. You can tribute give me a second. You can actually tribute the Windwitch Ice Bell and tribute the Windwitch Glass Bell. Tribute these 2, send them to the graveyard to special summon Awakening of the Possessed Rienru from your deck. And then what's cool about this card is if it's special summon, you can bounce a card your opponent controls. So if you're going second, bounce one of their cards. If you're going first, still, it's got some cool plays. You can synchro these 2 away into one of 2 cards. You can either synchro into a copy of Stardust Charge Warrior or a copy of Raptite Risen. So Stardust Charge Warrior will basically allow you to draw an additional card if you choose that route. And then the Raptite, if you have a wind monster in your graveyard, you can, basically if you have a wind monster in your graveyard, you can, once per turn during your opponent's turn, quick effect, banish a card in their graveyard, which again, that effect right now is actually very, very useful in the current metagame because a lot of decks rely on Graveyard Drytron and Virtual World, stuff like that. They really rely on Graveyard, so that effect is actually pretty cool to have access to. Now, in addition to that, we just linked away the Awakening of the Possessed, which will allow us to search, if we want to, a copy of a Spiritual Art card, which could be the Spiritual Wind Art, which is the one we're playing. So we basically choose one of these, Raptite or Risen. With this card, we get an additional card. With the Charge Warrior, we get an additional draw. With the Risen, we get the basically DD Crow effect. Typically, I will go with the Raptite over the Charge Warrior, but again, it really is very situational. It depends on what your hand looks like. And then, of course, we get this card during your opponent's turn. If they have like a graveyard effect, we can activate, banish that card. And then once they like normal summon, we can activate Spiritual Wind Art, tribute a wind. It doesn't have to be this, but it can be this. Tribute this, and then put whatever normal summon they have back on top of their deck. Now our board is cleared, so if we have another copy of Windwitch Ice Spell, we could just restart this whole play all over again. So it's pretty cool there. But that is basically it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, please like the video, and have a terrific day, guys.